What identity do you hold on to as a family man? And how is it serving you to get the results you want? Identity is such a powerful thing that sets the foundation for the stories and beliefs that we operate by. You'll hear things like once a cheater, always a cheater, or once a liar, always a liar. These are popular phrases that are widely accepted as true, but are they really though? We generalize by using these identity labels, like take a look at AA meetings and how they start off by stating that you're an alcoholic. Not saying AA doesn't work, but I am questioning whether holding on to that identity actually serves those that are breaking away from the addiction. What's going on, fellas? I want to welcome you to Alpha Dad Consulting. I am your host, G. Vidal, and on this show, we focus on helping family men rise above the challenges they face as husbands, fathers, and providers to embracing their role as a leader so that they can create the life at home they truly desire. We do this by bringing you tactics, strategies, resources, and conversations with incredible men who are playing this game of being a family leader at a high level. On this episode, I had the honor and privilege of interviewing a man who specializes in helping family men tap into a new identity code that actually produces the results they're seeking. His name is Cody Chapman. Cody lives in the great state of Montana with his wife of 14 years and 6 children. He was a pastor for 10 years and a firefighter for 4 years. Now he runs a business called the Iron Society, where he teaches men how to transform their lives with his unique method called the Identity Code. This helps men to powerfully and clearly define who they are, what they value, and how they will show up every day of their life. You're not going to want to miss our conversation as we dive into Cody's story and how he's helping men transform their lives. Let's go.
I can see the enemy approaching the battleground. Hear the drums pound like a thunder sound loud. I gather up my crowd to prepare them for what's coming. We've been summoned.
Welcome to Alpha Dad Consulting, man.
Yeah, bro, I'm pumped to be here, dude.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped to have you as well. I know that you and I have gotten a chance to kind of DM and connect on Instagram. That's kind of how we've been sort of following one another in terms of, what we've been up to. But, I've been sharing your post, man, when you send me that stuff and I see it like, okay, cool, this is going to resonate with my crew. Let me send that out and add it to the story and all that. So I love doing that, man. I think as we're in this space, right, one of the things that I look at is that, there's always the ego trip where people are like, they want to look at you as competition, or they go into that, with that mindset. And I think in this business that we're in, it's not like that. You know what I mean? It's at least the way I'm entering in is very collaborative. I'm like, I look at, you shared your background with me in terms of, you being a pastor for so long, you said 10 years being a pastor, 4 years firefighter. You have 6 kids. You have 6 kids of your own. So you know what the father game is like and all that.
Yeah.
And how old is your oldest, if you don't mind me asking?
My oldest is about to turn 13 in like 3 months.
Yeah. So my oldest is 5, right? So we're at different stages, man. And there's going to be guys that are going to come to me and they're going to have a 13-year-old or something like that maybe I don't really have an experience with. But I'm like, hey, Cody, he's got a 13-year-old. He's going through that right now. Let me send this person your way. Right? Like it's not an ego thing, man. It's like, it's the mission, right? Like we got to help these guys. We got to help these men and these families. So that's what it's all about. So I love what you're doing. And I love that we kind of get to collaborate like this together. So
yeah. Well, and at the end of the day too, like the way I look at it is every man needs to be reached however he needs to be reached. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Some guys need a very abrasive, hardcore, like in your face kind of guy, right? Some guys need a more gentle, kind of soft spoken, kind of, that kind of guy. Yeah. And for me, I'm like, I know I'm not going to reach the guys that need like the, hey bud, it's gonna be okay. Like, and like, I mean, when I'm one-on-one with guys, that side of me comes out more, but I'm like, I'm the dude that's going to shake somebody awake. Yeah. And if you don't like me, you'll go find somebody, that is that style. Right. Exactly. And so every guy needs to be reached differently. Every guy's at a different season. Every guy has different hurts and needs. Yeah. And in my estimation, it's like, however that man gets reached and however that man gets help, bring it. Like if it's you, if it's me, if it's a dozen or hundreds of other guys, I don't give a crap. Yeah. Right. I just want legacies to be built and lives to be lived as best they can to see our kids grow up and do even better than us.
Yeah, man. That's what it's about, bro. Yeah, I'm part of this program called Apogee Strong with Matt Beaudreau and Tim Kennedy, and we talk about changing bloodlines, which is right along the line of what you're saying, right? Like that's what it is, man. Like it's about changing your bloodlines. If you could be the one to change it for your entire family.
Absolutely. You know? And that's what I'm doing right now. Like, I mean, the life I'm living and the stuff I'm doing, it comes from that because of where I came from and the way I was raised. It's like, I mean, it's one of the reasons why I want to have so many kids, because I'm like, I'm changing this and I want to change the Chapman name for generations. So let's make as many of these suckers as we can and release them into the world.
Yeah, man. Be fruitful and multiply.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I'm all for it, bro. And with that, why don't we get into your background and just kind of a little, give us kind of a summary in terms of what was it like growing up in the Chapman household, right? And then maybe talk a little bit about your relationship with your father, right? Because for better or for worse, I feel like that always plays into how we grow up as men and how we show up for our families, right? So I'd love to hear that about you, man.
Yeah. So I grew up, I have one brother. He's 2 years younger than me. First and foremost, like one of the things that I'm sure we'll talk about later is something that I came up with a few years back called the identity code. It's basically defining who you are, what you value, and how you'll show up. There's a line in there for me that says, I'm a son of God, born with a purpose that cannot be stolen from me. So my mom got pregnant with me when she was 19 years old. Her and my dad were not married, and they did not want to have a kid. Oh, wow. And so their answer to that was go have an abortion. Wow. So my mom had made the decision. My mom and my dad had made the decision to abort me. My mom had made the appointment, had all the pre-op stuff done, and she was going to have me aborted. And she was in the doctor's office getting ready to have the procedure done. Wow. She told me when I was 14 that she was sitting in the waiting room and something told her. She doesn't know what it was. My mom didn't follow Jesus, but she says something told her to get up and walk out. And so she was like, what's this thing telling me to do? Like, what is this, voice basically? So she gets up and starts to walk out. And she goes to open the door when she's leaving to walk out of the doctor's office. The doctor calls her name right before she leaves. She looks back and just keeps walking. Right. So that was like, for me, before I was even born, right, I felt like my life was at risk. Yeah. Right. And so, but growing up, I mean, it's not, I didn't grow up like, I mean, I would call us like middle, lower class, right? My dad was super blue collar, worked at a chemical plant for plastics down in Southern California. I mean, working the graveyard shift, swing shift, day shift. I mean, anything he could do to make the extra money to provide for us. Right. Yeah. And he did a killer job. We always had food on the table, always had clothes on our back, always had a roof over our head, right? Never had to worry about that growing up.
Yo, real quick, before we continue on with the content, right now here in the U.S. alone, close to 50% of all marriages are ending in divorce. That means that 50% of families are broken, and the dad usually gets voted off the island and has to fight back with the courts to regain access to his kids. It is one of the worst things happening to our families right now, and here at Alpha Dad Consulting, we are on a mission to change this statistic. Most of the time, these divorces happen as a result of how you as a man show up to lead your family. This was the case when I almost lost mine. I was trying to be my wife's dad instead of trying to be her man, and it created a series of problems that almost ended our marriage. If I wouldn't have changed as a husband, as a man, and as a leader, our children would have never entered this world. Can you imagine your kids not existing? All because of something you failed to do. I can't, and I refuse to. It took a lot of trial and error for me to turn my marriage around and create the family life I wanted. Look, I don't know where you're at right now, but if your family life is not what you envisioned, a passionate marriage full of love and respect, an unbreakable bond with your kids, a fortified mindset, along with the necessary skills to build a life of abundance, then I want to give you the advantage I didn't have while I was figuring all this out. It's called the Ultimate Family Leader Playbook, a free guide with 7 battle-tested strategies you can use to keep your family from ever becoming a divorce statistic. Had I not started implementing these in my own life, I would have lost my family many years ago. Give yourself the advantage I didn't have. The best part is that these strategies don't take much time, and if you do them, they will have a significant impact on you and your family. Just go to alphadadconsulting.com/leader to get your copy of the playbook. Again, that's alphadadconsulting.com/leader. Grab your copy of the Ultimate Family Leader Playbook today and start showing up as the leader your family deserves. Now let's get back to the content.
But my parents' relationship growing up was always very tensioned. I'm like every single night, it seemed like always just screaming and yelling fights all the time growing up. And so that was the context in which I grew up, you know, and that was my entire childhood. You know, eventually as I started to grow up and like kind of be able to figure things out, I wouldn't call my dad a raging alcoholic by any means, but I mean, could throw back, you know, a 6-pack or more a night, you know, to just basically kind of numb himself from the long hours, the, you know, arguing with my mom, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And my dad did a lot of things growing up that was really well. Like, I mean, I remember from a young age, like when I was 9, I remember driving in the car with him. He would always be listening to, I mean, an old school, like Tony Robbins, old school stuff. A guy named Marshall Silver, if you know Marshall Silver.
I don't.
He's like old school personal development.
Really? Okay.
But that's the stuff I would, instead of listening to music in the car with my dad, which I did a lot, I was listening to personal development stuff since I was like 9 years old.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, to me was one of the greatest gifts my dad ever gave me, you know?
Sure.
But as far as like when I moved out of the house when I was 21, I moved from California to Washington State. Like I had to really figure out how to start becoming a man, because my dad showed me certain parts about being a man, like, you know, like provide for your family, work your tail off. But other than that, I didn't learn about integrity. My dad never talked to me about sex or pornography or any of these things, right? And so I had to start stumbling my way through. And luckily, by the grace of God, I had some incredible mentors that I got to seek out and live with them that had large families. And they basically taught me how to be a man. Same thing when I got married. I mean, my only example was, oh, you're supposed to fight all the time and you just work hard and whatever. Yeah. So like my relationship with my dad as it stands today, like I haven't seen my dad in 6 years. And it's not because the relationship is strained. It's just not in the cards for him to come visit, you know, and for us to go visit, it's hard. I got 6 kids. Yeah. I don't care how you slice and dice that. That's hard.
That's a hard travel, man.
Yeah. And in my code as well, there's a piece in there where we intentionally have guys talk about who their father is and what their father is to them. Because it's a firm belief of mine. If you do not reconcile your childhood trauma or hurts with your father, you are destined to repeat them in some way. And so in my code, I literally say I'm the son of Cody Chapman, the man who gave me my greatest gifts. And the reason I say that is not because he taught me everything about being a man. You know, I hear some of these guys who have these dads who are like, they taught me how to work on cars, taught me how to pick up chicks, taught me how to do this, taught me how to fish and all this. My dad didn't do that. But what my dad did give me is he gave me the few pieces about work ethic and grit and the personal development. But at the same time, he showed me a lot of what I did not want. And to me, the way I reconciled that, and instead of sitting here being a victim and saying, I grew up in a house where it was always fighting, we were middle lower class and a claw for everything. I'm like, no. Like that was a gift, because what it taught me was there's another side of the coin that is possible if I choose to not look at that and be a victim and say, that's my destiny, but I can create something different. I can take the pen out of fate's hands and I can write my own story. And I can write a different one. And so so the house I grew up, I mean, it was always ups and downs and all arounds, you know, but at the end of the day, I see my upbringing as a tremendous gift, not only for the positive things, but also for the negative, because it taught me exactly the opposite of what I wanted to pursue. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Wow. What a story. Yeah. You know, so where my mind goes with what you were saying initially with the kind of the almost abortion story, right?
Yeah.
Is, you know, I have a lot of guys, a lot of friends that they don't like to celebrate their birthdays, right? Because they feel like, it's for me. I'd rather just do something for somebody else and this and that, right? And I've always taken the approach that your birthday is an important day and it should be celebrated because it's the day you got a shot.
100%.
It's the day you got a shot at life, man. It's a day that you got a shot at making a difference, leaving a legacy, right? Creating a family. Like all those things would not have happened had your parents made a different call, had your mom made a different call that day, right?
Yeah.
That's a gift. That's the ultimate gift, right? And then out of all the possibilities of who came out of that, right? Like it's you, man. Like you were chosen. Like that's a gift, like you were saying. And it just made me think about that, man, because I think a lot of people don't appreciate the life that they have, right? And they'll squander it. They'll squander the time. They'll waste the time instead of realizing, like, man, there's a lot of gratitude to be had here, just by the fact that we're here, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of guys don't like celebrating their birthdays because they don't feel worthy of being celebrated, right? So all they see in their mind, every man knows their darkest secrets that nobody else knows.
Yeah.
Every man knows where they failed, where they compromised their integrity, where they fell short of the bar that they've made for themselves.
Yeah.
And so a lot of men that I see that don't want to celebrate their birthday or anything like that is like, don't celebrate me, because they don't even think they're worthy of it. Yeah. And in my head, when I see that, I'm like, if you don't think you're even worthy to be celebrated on the day that, I mean, the stat of actually being conceived and born is like 1 in 1 something crazy trillion. Yep. Like the fact that you're even here is just an absolute miracle.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you don't want to be celebrated for just the man that you are and the fact that you're here, I think that just goes to show the depths of how much that man is hurting. It's like, man, if you don't think you're worthy of celebration, what makes you think you're worthy of living a life that is going to leave a legacy? Yeah. What makes you think you're worthy and you have the capability of loving your wife well, or, leading your kids well, or any of that, you know? And that's part of the depths of, I mean, it's the reason why you and I do the work we do, because like that's a surface level thing out here that we see, but there's layers deep to that, guys have got to work through, because I mean, like another part of my code, I wake up every day and I'm like, I'm set apart and born to win. I tell that to myself every single day. And that's not some fluffy, affirmation. I truly believe that. I believe like I am set apart and I am born to win. So freaking A, man, we're going to go today and we're going to crush the day because like we woke up. Like my buddy sent me that this morning. He sent me a video before we go to the gym and it was just him. And he was like, we woke up. We woke up. And I was like, let's go. We did. Yeah. We woke up. Come on. We got work to do.
Yeah, man. I love that, dude. Yeah, that's exactly right, bro. Like that's what it is, man. And you're right about the layers, man. So many guys and society's kind of doing that to us too. Like we're getting beat. Men are getting beat by all sides, right? Like you're seeing sort of like the effemination, or more men becoming more effeminate now, and like the masculinity being looked at as toxic, right? And not necessary. And like all this stuff that's happening, in our society. And then on top of that, we have men that don't believe in themselves, that don't, appreciate their own life, and that don't see their own self-worth, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll get bottled into distractions, like the vices and things like that you described. So yeah, man, there's a lot of work to do, man, on our end for sure. Yeah. With regards to, how you're viewing your dad and the gift, like how you said that, it's a gift that you were born from him and that you came from him, and the things that he taught you, good or bad, right? How has that played into, your marriage, right? Like you coming in as a husband, you witness your parents fighting all the time and all that. And did you look at that and just say, I'm going to do the opposite of that? Or was it initially, did you find yourself maybe going that route and you had to kind of get that self-awareness check, right? Like how was that transition for you?
Yeah. So, I think it's by the grace of God. I mean, that I never went down the road that he went down. Wow, awesome. I was so adamantly opposed to having what I saw I did everything in my power to make sure I never created that kind of culture in my marriage or my home. And because of that, that's why I seeked out the mentors I did and all of that, you know. But I mean, even in that though, like no marriage is perfect, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's like, I think what a lot of men have a tendency to do is, and this is what I actually found out. I mean, I was talking to my buddies who's been through all kinds of, you know, childhood wound therapy. And so I called him recently about some stuff I was kind of experiencing in my head and my heart. And I'm like, I don't even know what to feel about this. And what I realized was for years, the marriage that I was building and the type of father that I was pursuing to be, it was not from a place of being empowered. It was a middle finger to my dad. It was saying, hey, dad, forget you. I'm going to show you. You never taught me this, but I'm going to show you how good I could be in spite of you. And so I was essentially operating from like, it was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, a type of scarcity and lack mindset of you didn't give me this. So I'm going to give you the middle finger and show you that I could do it without you because I never felt like you were there for me. And I think a lot of guys operate from that, right? Where it's like, I'm not going to be that and I'm going to prove that I won't be. And so they're empowered from this place. And it's all from this place of negativity and like this, like almost bitter heart. And I realized that like, oh man, how much better could I even be as a father and as a husband if I don't live from a place of I'm going to prove you wrong, but I'm going to prove God right, essentially, of what he calls me to be and who I say that I am. And so I think, you know, luckily I never went down any of those paths. But even still, though, I mean, even today, I still see myself thinking certain ways. And that's like kind of the mental programming of, you know, like I said, grew up in a lower class home. And so mindsets around money and all of that, you know, like even when we have like, I'm literally like 15 grand in the checking account, right? I'm sitting there like, spend it. We don't know if it's going to be here ever again, you know? And I'm like, oh gosh, that is so like lack mindset, you know? So I see different things like that in my life still that I'm working through. But man, I truly believe like it's by the grace of God. And I mean, my wife is, I mean, I told her this morning, she is saying she's 1 in a million, I think isn't quite giving an accurate number to it. Like my wife is an absolute rock star, you know? Awesome, and bro. So being able to like, our communication has always been like, I mean, it's grown over the years. But that's the other piece of the whole pie, right? I mean, if you grow up with father wounds and then you marry a gal that has tremendous trauma of her own, and you're both bringing a ton of baggage in, I mean, that's a recipe for like, y'all need to get into some therapy from day one, you know? But luckily my wife had a phenomenal upbringing, like outstanding. And so I think that really contributed to the positive trajectory from the very beginning, which I think has enabled us to even develop tools and resources for marriages and for husbands. It's been part of the journey of like, gosh, because one of the things that always boggles my mind is like these guys that get divorced and have to learn all this stuff, you know, and I don't know your background, so I apologize. Like, I don't want to say anything offensive, but you know, guys that are like, yeah, I've been divorced 3 times and now I want to teach you about marriage, or, you know, I want to teach you how to be a man, but I haven't even been married. I see these guys that are literally men's coaches in, you know, the Instagram space. And I'm like, you're coming from a place of head knowledge, but no authority from your life. Like I get it. You've been through the ringer. And I think, you know, your scars, you know, or your tests can become your testimony. And I believe all that. But sometimes, you know, people are like, oh, you haven't been through what I've been through, so you don't want to, you know, you shouldn't be talking me through it. I'm like, hold on a minute. Like, just because somebody knows how to operate on a cancerous body, you know, like, or just because somebody had cancer doesn't mean they should operate on somebody's body that has cancer. Right. Exactly. You might want to operate from the person, you know, get the operation done from somebody that like knows what in the world they're doing. You know? so I think that's just, it's been a huge blessing for me. And like, it's like I said, it's just by the grace of God that we've been able to have, the tremendous 14 years that we had so far.
That's awesome, bro. Congrats on that, man. That's a huge feat for sure. Like, that's a big deal.
We got at least 60, 70 more to go. So
do it, man. Do it. I love it. Yeah. We're at 12 right now. So we're going into our 13, bro. So we're catching up. We're right there. We're right there.
Right there, dude.
Yeah, man. But I love it, man. I love being married. I love my wife. Everything you were saying right now about your wife, in terms of the relationship she had with her, specifically her dad, and it wasn't her biological dad. It was her stepdad. Okay. But yeah, I mean, he was her dad. You know what I mean? He was the one that was present and all that. And I was just curious to see how you think that plays into, finding the right woman, right? Like, and the importance of the father's presence, not only in the man's life or in a young boy's life, but in the girl's life, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, man. So can you speak to that in terms of how that relationship was with your wife and her dad, and like, how strong that is and how strong that might still be right now, right? So
yeah. So I remember taking my now father-in-law out to coffee at Starbucks when I knew that I wanted to date his daughter.
Okay.
And previously I'd never asked a father's permission to date a girl. I dated a ton of girls and I had never gone that route, but when my mentor was like, hey dude, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it right. And you need to take her father out and ask her dad for permission to date. And I was like, I thought you just do that for getting married, dude. Yeah. And so I take him out and I'm like, hey, so, I'll be very honest with you. I am attracted to your daughter. I think that she could be the girl that I want to marry. Right. But obviously at this stage, the next phase would be dating your daughter. Can I date your daughter? He looks back at me and is like, absolutely not. You cannot. And I'm like, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be a joke. Right. And he's like, no, you cannot date my daughter. And there's a couple more minutes of conversation and I'm like, cool, my coffee's cold and I got an appointment to be at. So peace out, buddy. See you later.
At least they have the shotgun there, right? Like at the table or anything, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it was about 3 months later that both my wife Stephanie and I went out to coffee with her dad and her mom.
Okay.
And basically said, hey, like these feelings for each other aren't going away. We really want to pursue a relationship. Yeah. Can we have permission to date? And they looked back and said, you cannot date, but if this is what the Lord would want, and this is where the Lord's leading you, you can court our daughter. And at the time I'm like, what does basketball have anything to do with what we're talking about right now? Yes. I had no idea what courting was. Yeah. Zero clue. Yeah. But I was like, okay, well, I mean, it sounds like I got permission. So whatever this courting thing is, count me in, rock and roll. I get the girl. Right.
Yeah.
And so for the, about 9 months that we dated before we got engaged, we never once went on a one-on-one date.
No ever. Way. Really? Yeah.
Our relationship consisted of me going over to her family's house for dinner a couple times a week, hanging out with her family and having food. And then I would go to her house on Saturdays when they had their family work days, and I would just work my tail off with her dad. They lived on like 5 acres in the Northwest, and I would be chopping wood all day. I'd be dragging brush into a brush fire. Wow. I got my first tick in my armpit that her mom had to pull out.
Oh man. Yeah.
And that was our dating. That was our courting relationship. Wow. And our first one-on-one date was our wedding night, and which is always the joke for me. I'm like, I got laid on my first date with my wife, right?
That's so good.
And so, but even to this day, I mean, her father, again, my parents weren't believers growing up. And so, but her dad, very, very strong man of faith. Yeah. And so I've got to watch how he raised his kids, how he loved his wife. He's the one that got me into hunting. And I mean, he literally gave me my first hunting rifle recently. And so he taught me all that. And there's just over the years, it's like, I mean, I call him dad, and he's taught me a lot of just what it looks like to be a man of God. And even to this day, like they were out visiting, they came out to visit us here in Montana like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And even then, you know, we're talking about faith, we're talking about family, we're talking about, you know, the future and all these things. Yeah. But again, again, that's by the grace of God, because not all guys get that, you know. But even what I would say is like, whatever cards a man would get dealt, you have to play your own hand. Yeah. You know, and you have to know how to play the cards you get dealt. And a lot of guys are like, well, I had a crappy upbringing, married into a psycho family, you know, and I'm like, bro, that's the cards you got. So learn how to play the game with the cards you got. You know, learn what you have to do. And some guys have to learn how to do things different. Yeah. And just because it might be a little harder doesn't give you a pass to throw your hands up in the air and, you know, just get this victim mindset of, well, this is just as good as it gets. I'm like, who told you that? Who told you that? Where's it written that that's going to be the case? Yeah. Like like I said, take the pen and write a friggin' story that you could be proud of, no matter what the cards you got dealt. Yeah. You know, because we got dealt different cards than a lot of people, you know, and we've had to, over the years, learn how to play with those cards. And so, yeah, I mean, the relationship with her dad is great. Love the guy. He's been a phenomenal influence in my life and even in our kids' lives. So
yeah, that's beautiful, man. And then testament to you, bro, because you did that right for her. Like you deemed her worthy enough. You were like, hey, this is the one. Like any other guy wouldn't have gone through, like, you know, if they were just looking for the thing that they're always looking for, right? Like they would have been out. Like, what? I got to go to work every Saturday. I can only see her at her house, right? Yeah. And I can only spend time with her. I've never gone on an actual date with her. We've been together 9 months and all this stuff. Like a regular modern day dude nowadays, like they would have been out real quick. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, and you know? I told my mentor when this got proposed, I was like, so Steph's parents don't want us to date. They want us to court. And they say we can't have any one-on-one dates and all of this. and for me, coming from Southern California, I mean, I was a personal trainer down in Huntington Beach. Oh, okay. And I was dating my clients every weekend. Yeah. You know, it was just like whatever. Yeah. And he looked at me and said, hey, bro, you can pay for this relationship with credit and have to pay dividends on the back end the hard way, or you can pay cash for it up front and then enjoy and reap the benefits for the rest of your life. And it was in that moment I was like, bro, cash on the table. I'll pay for this all up front. I'll do all the hard work up front. Yeah. And I think that's where guys, whether it's marriage or anything else, they want to put it on a credit card because it's easy. They want the easy button. What gives me the most pleasure now? Yeah. And then I'll figure out how to clean the mess up later. Yeah. And that's where guys, they're constantly cleaning up messes because they paid for it on credit over here. Right. With their spiritual life, with their mindset, with their marriage, with their parenting, with their kid, like everything. Yeah. And it's like more guys just need to say, hey, I'm going to pay the really hard price up front. Yeah. And know it's probably going to be slower and it's probably going to hurt more. But I know that when this is paid in full, I'm going to be able to reap the rewards for the rest of my life. Yeah. And more guys need to pay up front, cold, hard cash in pain, blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. That's great. That's a great analogy too, that he gave you. Yeah. For that.
Gosh, he gave me, I don't even know how many of those over the years.
I bet. Yeah. That's awesome, man. So I want to get into this concept of, well, one, you know, it's a men's coaching that you're doing, right? And the Iron Society, I'm assuming, I mean, that's like a group mentorship, right? Yeah. Like so it's a community that you have of these men. I want to go into this question, which is, where do you start, right? In terms of, because one of the questions that we've always asked, especially in the Apogee Brotherhood that we have, is that what is the catalyst, right, to get a guy to wake up to the need that they need to change, right? Yeah. And we've been finding it difficult to kind of answer that, because you can put all this good stuff and talk about the identity code and talk about, you know, all the things, right? All the good things, like, hey, at the end of you changing going through this transformation is the life experience or the family life experience that you actually want, that you've actually envisioned, right? But how do we get them to wake up? What are some of the experiences that you've had with that?
I think across the board, in order to wake a man up, he needs to get to the end of his rope, and he needs to he either needs to lose everything, be on the brink of losing everything, or be in so much pain that he's at the bottom of the barrel, and that's finally when he'll look up. There are some guys that have come into the Iron Society that are not in that place, and I would say they are the exception, not the rule. But I think most guys just will not change unless something is painful enough. I think, I don't know who said it originally, who coined it, but it's like when the pain of remaining the same is too much, that is what will cause you to change. And I think that's where men really are. They have to either experience the pain or get shaken awake to see how disastrous of a life they're living. And that's why, it's like some of the things I'll share online, some people are like, well, you're being a little harsh, bro. I'm like, no. What's harsh is how much of a douchebag he's being to his wife. What's harsh is him not leading and loving his kids. What's harsh is a man leading his family to be drowning in debt. What's harsh is him drowning himself in drugs or alcohol or porn. That's harsh. I'm just going to be the one to call out the elephant in the room and say, dude, you were made for more than this. And you need to be like, wake up to the fact that you're ruining your life, like absolutely wrecking it. So I think that's what ultimately wakes guys up is they have to feel some pain. They have to. Yeah,
that's a tough one, bro. It's so tough because, you, and I know you're this way, I can tell just because of the interaction we're having is that you have a heart towards people, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And you, it's hard when you see such potential in other people, especially men, right? You see potential in them. You know that potential just needs to be unlocked. And you want to wake them up and you want to tell them like, dude, just do this, man. Like it'll be so much better for you. I promise, but they don't do it. Like they don't follow the advice. They don't buy into it. Right. And I think it's what you're saying is like, they haven't hit enough pain. And sometimes for somebody that cares deeply for other people, it's hard to come to grips and accept that, right? That you can't just wake everybody up, right? That just because you're doing the right things and you're not perfect, but you're doing the right things every day, right? And you're working towards becoming that better man. And you can only be kind of that lighthouse for them, right? And just continue doing and be that lighthouse that stands firm, that no matter how far away from sea they get, they can come back to you, right? And they know that you're true north. Like, hey, I can go back to Cody because I know he's reliable, he's dependable, he's done it for this consistent amount of time, right? But it's their journey. It's like you can't force it on them, right? Or else it's not real. It's not. So it's just interesting, man. It's for me, for sure, because I have a lot of friends that I've grown up with, right? And I see certain things in their life and certain things that they're struggling with, and I'm at a different stage because I've done the work, like you said, right? I've done the work, and I've gotten the cards that I've got dealt. I've been playing them in the best way that I can possibly do, or do so. And changes have happened, results have happened in my life. And it almost seems sometimes like there's this deviation that occurs naturally just because you want different things at different levels or different stages of your life, right? And
absolutely,
you want to go back to your friends who you grew up with, your boys, right? And be like, dude, come with me, man. Like, let's roll, all you got to do is this and this and that. But sometimes they don't want it, right? Like they don't want that. So
yeah. And that's where I think like guys that have woken up and have experienced some level of success, you need to be like the superhero in the movie that the little kid is watching, right? Like, and this is where for me recently, like a word that I've really latched onto, and it's from Kyle Carnahan. He and I were on the phone from Superhuman Fathers.
Yeah, I had him on the show, actually.
Yeah. He and I were chatting the other day, and he's like, bro, you just need to become undeniable. And I really held on to that one word that he said, because I think there is another way a man can wake up, is they can see something that is so like the little kid in the movie, right? They see the superhero and all of a sudden they want to go get the costume. They want all the accoutrements. They walk around in that costume all the time because they saw a character that they wanted to be like. There was this aspirational identity that they saw and they're like, I want that. And that is part of what drives me is I want to live life in a way where other men look and they're like, dude, I want that. I like what everything you have, I want. And I am not there by any means, right? There are still pieces of my life where I am chipping away and hacking away every single day. Yeah. But I think that is the other way. If there are men that, you know, are able to kind of lurk, right? I have a lot of those on Facebook and Instagram and in my life where they're just lurkers. Say much to me. They don't comment. They don't whatever. They just kind of, they're there and they're watching. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then it's years later that they literally reach out to me and say, bro, I've been watching you for years and I want what you have. And I say, awesome. I can teach you how to do that. Yeah. Right. So I think that's the other way. Other than pain, it's being exactly what you said. It's being that lighthouse. It's being that superhero that they look at and they're like, I want that. Yeah. And so guys like you and I think it's part of our responsibility is doing everything we can to become that, to be the example and set the standard, because it's not just other men that we're doing that for. I have 5 boys and 1 girl, but for the boys, for me, I am setting the bar of what I expect them to surpass. Yes. Right. Yeah. And for my daughter, I'm setting the bar of saying any man that you ever talk to, if he does not reach the bar that dad sets, you don't even need to talk to him. Yeah. Right. So there's so many angles by which we need to set the bar and be the standard and that lighthouse for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you got to give them the court speech too.
Oh, bro, man.
You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. You got that. You got that in the back pocket. You got to do the court speech.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's coming for one lucky guy.
Yeah, bro. I'm on that same boat too, man. I'm about to have another boy. So we have a girl in the middle right now. My little girl, 2 years old, Mia, and she's a firecracker, bro. Like she's she's wild, man. She's gonna keep. She's gonna
sounds
keep
like
these
our daughters
boys.
Would get along,
bro. No joke, man. Yeah, she keeps the older one in check right now, and she's about to keep the younger one in check. And yeah, she's wild, bro. But yeah, man. Not to get off topic, I just thought I'd mention that. It's pretty funny.
No, dude, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it,
bro. So let's talk about the identity code, man. Let's talk a little bit about what that is, how you came about discovering that, because we hear that a lot, right? In terms of, especially in the space, personal development space and all that, like adapting, acquiring the mindset of the person that you're trying to become, right? And changing your identity and how that plays into you as a father, as a husband, as a man.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, even you said exactly what it is. I combat, right? Accepting the identity of the person you're trying to become. Gotcha. Right. So the way that I approach it personally is I'm not trying to grab an identity of somebody that I'm trying to become. I'm just saying that I'm already that person. Right. I'm going to define who I am, what I believe, and how I will show up, because this is where I mean, the book that I'm writing that's coming out in a few months called The Identity Driven Life. The whole idea and the entire premise behind it is there's 2 ways to live your life. One way is to try and adopt all of these different habits, behaviors, and mindsets to become somebody, right? To become something. The other is saying, I'm just going to accept these as if they are true, and I'm going to live empowered from that, right? Because here's the deal. Yeah. If a guy, like, let's say he wants to accept the identity of being a good husband or a good father, right? When in the world does that switch actually flip and you get to accept that title for real? When does that happen? Yeah. Like, does an eagle fly over the sky carrying balloons and dropping cupcakes and like signs that say you are now a good father and a patient husband? Like, does that happen? Like, no, it does not happen. That, like, where does that river actually get crossed? And so what I say is like, how about you just actually decide that you are this and just live that way? Right. It's living empowered from an identity that you're saying, this is who I am. Yeah. And this is where, like, for example, smokers, it's one of the best ways to explain this. Quitting smoking has like a 95% failure rate. Jeez. It's like, as far as success goes with anything, it's got to be the worst possible thing that people try to do, right? Now, if I was going to go to you, right, and let's say that you are not a smoker, okay, you don't smoke, and I say, would you like a cigarette? You're going to tell me no, but what are you going to say?
Yeah, no, I don't smoke, or no, I'm not a smoker. Or I don't smoke,
or I'm not a smoker, right? If you are a smoker that's trying to quit and I come to you and give you a cigarette, what are you going to say?
No, I'm trying to quit, right?
I'm trying to quit. Okay. I'm trying to quit. One person declined the cigarette based on an identity statement. I'm not a smoker. The other person answered it trying to achieve an identity. I'm trying to quit. I'm trying to be someone who does not smoke anymore, right? And we see a 95% failure rate from that.
Yeah.
And it's because deep down, they are still holding on to this identity that they are a smoker that is trying to quit. Big picture, when people are trying to, grab these different pieces of identity and try to become something, that is all behavior modification. Every single bit of it is behavior. I'm trying as hard as I can to become this other person. And so what our whole philosophy is, how about you just draw a line in the sand and say that you already are that person? Because there's no rule out there that says you can't do that.
Yeah.
There's no rule out there that says you can't. But the thing that people run into is all of a sudden now your brain starts telling you otherwise because it has your track record in mind. And it says, well, no. Like you've done X, Y, and Z for years. That's not who you are. And what we teach guys to do is, who's in control, your brain or you? How about you actually take control now of the narrative and you tell your brain, no. That may have the way I lived and who I was before. But that's not who I am anymore. And it is, dude, bro, I'm telling you, it is the coolest freaking thing to see in the Iron Society. We have guys coming in. We had this one guy, Kevin. He on the verge of divorce because his wife had kicked him out of the house. He wasn't living in the house anymore because he was such an angry man. Such an angry man, would fly off the handle. At the slightest thing, he loses it, right? Wow. Comes inside the Iron Society, does his code, which normally takes a couple weeks. He bangs it out in 72 hours. And he posts it in the group and all of this. There's a piece of his code that talked about patience and being caring and gentle, right? Assuming that identity, just putting it on like a piece of clothing and saying, this is the clothes I wear now, right? Him and his wife owned a business together, so they were still interacting during this time. And just about a few days after that, something happened that would have normally been one of those moments where he just would fly off the friggin' handle. Yeah. And he just responded with like, oh, okay. Yeah, we'll take care of that. No big deal. Right. Because in the Iron Society, part of our rhythm is we read our codes to ourselves every single morning to start the day by reminding ourselves of who we are. Yeah. And and he had done that morning. And his wife looks at him, and this is like he's not even been in the Iron Society like a week. And she's like, like, what kind of response is that? Because she was shocked that he didn't fly off the handle. Yeah. And he literally said to her, he said, that's not who I am anymore.
Nice.
And just like, and his wife was literally like, okay, cute, right? You're super inspired because you just joined this new group and you did this thing called the code and rah, 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 right? Fast forward 6 weeks or 5 weeks. Him and his wife had interactions for weeks on end. And goes, so here's the deal. You're right. You are not the same man that I've been married to for years. Wow. Like you're living as a different man now. You need to come back into our home and be my husband again in our house and be the leader of our home again, because the man I see and the man I've been experiencing is not the same man anymore. Wow. And within like 5 weeks, he's back in his home. Divorce is off the table. Same thing happened. Bro. The exact same thing happened with another guy 2 weeks ago. Really? Joined. I mean, almost identical. But same thing. I mean, it happens with guys that like, I mean, are addicted to porn and alcohol and not leading their families well. They define who they are. And then it's as simple as, okay, cool. Now we expect you just to go live that way. And we're going to encourage you and support you and remind you of who you are. Yeah. And we see, I got a DM from one of the guy's wives like 2 months ago. And bro, I lost it when I read it, because she's like, hey, I just got to tell you, since he's joined the Iron Society, he's been doing this thing called the Code. My husband is not the same man anymore. And there was this line in there that broke me. She said, our family finally has a leader now.
Jeez. Wow.
And I was like, all right, that's it. Close it down. We're done. Like we accomplished everything we,
Jeez.
But like, and
that's
this is,
awesome.
I mean, this happens to every man that comes in, because they're no longer striving for something, right? Because we tell the guys, like, you will never live beyond an identity that you've embraced. As long as you embrace it, you will never outlive it. And so when people try to adopt these different, identity pieces and become something, if they're trying to become it, it means they are still holding on to another thing. And so I'm like, bro, loosen your grip and let it go. You don't have to hold on to that anymore. You can grab onto something else and just live that way. And guys think that like, no, that's not possible. It's not possible that I can do that. And I'm like, if you hold on to the identity of it is impossible, it will never be possible. Right? Like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And that's what we tell guys is like, just let it be done. Just let it be done and live that way.
Bro, man, that's so powerful, dude. The feedback you got from that wife too, like that's like mission accomplished for sure. Like that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we had one guy, dude. Oh God. And we'll move on after this, but this guy, he in the Iraqi war, disabled, severe PTSD. And I mean, he called me the other day and I posted on my story. I mean, you might've seen it, but he called me and he was like, man, I have effed my life up. I am spiraling. Right. And I had almost an hour-long conversation with this guy and like, yeah, you're doing that because he told me about his childhood. And I'm like, dude, you're holding on to pieces of identity that you grabbed when you were 8 years old and you're 43 now and they're not serving you anymore. And I was like, let it go. And from this moment on, just from this call, you get to define who you are. And he said, he texted me the next morning, said, dude, you'll never believe it. And he hadn't even joined yet. Oh, okay. We haven't even had him in the group yet. And he's like, he texted me, he's like, dude, from our call, he's like, I already feel like a different man because you gave me permission to not hold on to these things and just live as this different man. And he said his 14-year-old son came up to him as he was standing in the kitchen and his son just saw something different about him. And his son asked him, he's like, Dad, is everything okay? And he looked back at his son and was like, everything's actually awesome. And it was just that simple shift of realizing like, you don't have to continue to be who you have always been. There's no rule that says that you have to. And when guys just get that through their freaking thick skulls, it can be the game changer that absolutely changes the trajectory of a man's life, of his marriage, and of his family, his legacy.
Yeah. Dude, that's powerful, man.
It is. It's so incredible to watch.
Yeah. And it really is just like, it's reprogramming your mind, man, reprogramming the beliefs, the stories that you've come to accept as true about yourself. Right. And you're just, it's that shift, man. I mean, you got my wheels turning, bro, in terms of like the methodology, because I'm like, wow, it's pretty brilliant. Like, what do you say? And maybe this is me playing devil's advocate a little bit, right? But what do you say to the guy that's thinking like, well, isn't that kind of like a fake it till you make it type of, mentality? Like you're faking the identity, even though it's not true technically, right? Like, because you still have the habits of being the smoker, or habits of being the angry man, or whatever it is, right? So what do you say is like, how do they make that shift, right? From that?
Yeah. So to preface this, so all the guys that are in the Iron Society, the Society is it is specifically for Christian men. Right?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
If a non-believer comes in, we're going to be at a disconnect. A non-believer could take this methodology and apply it to their life, and we'll still see massive, powerful change.
For sure.
But I work specifically with men that follow Jesus.
Gotcha.
So one of the things that, to answer that question, right, there's a scripture that says we are transformed by the renewing of our mind. Yeah. That word in the New Testament only used 3 times. The 2 other times it's used, it's referring to how Jesus was transformed in a couple different ways. The other time it's used, it's referring to us and how we are transformed. And it's by our mind. It's not by what we do. Yeah. So first of all, like this entire game is a battle in our head. It is the battle we're fighting is actually between our ears. Right. And so even when I hear you say, well, what about this? What about these habits? Right. I believe that is not the man that is wanting to ask those questions. It's their brain that is so used to all these behaviors coming out of their mouth saying, well, what about this, buddy? Right. Like whatever you want to do this. Right. So that's where, like, I love Jocko Willink, right? And I love his discipline, his freedom, and all of that. And for years, I mean, I did the whole wake up at 4:30 a.m. like a psychopath. And like, I mean, it was cool for a while it lasted, right? Yeah. So from when a man would come to me and say, well, I still see these things in my life, because there's a guy that's in the Iron Society right now that's been addicted to pornography for 20 years. And he's fighting that battle, right? Yeah. And part of his code is that he is pure and walks in integrity, right? But he still watches porn, right? And so it's like, anybody could ask, like, well, how do you reconcile that? If he's grabbing onto that new identity, how can you reconcile the fact that he still does this, right? So one of the things that we talk about a lot, and Scripture actually talks about the old, like whenever anyone comes to Christ, he is a new creation. Right. The old is gone. The new has come. Right. And so what we tell guys, because we believe it's founded in Scripture, is these behaviors, that is the old man trying to claw his way back from the grave. And and so what we believe is those are not really what you want. Those are rogue actions of the old man coming back through. And so we say all the time, kill the old man. And I'm not saying, go kill the old people. I'm saying that old man, because every single day as we walk out this process of embracing this new identity, the old one is going to rear its head, right? It's going to. The guy that got back with his wife and his wife saw the new man, since then, he's still had a couple anger outbursts, right? For sure. But what we do in the Iron Society specifically is we don't do what a lot of people do is behavior-based accountability, right? And we say, okay, well, that was the action. Don't do that action, right? Okay. What we do is when a guy comes to us, right, the guy that's watching porn or the guy that got angry or whatever, what we do is we say, that's not who you are. We do identity-based accountability, because in the Iron Society, as guys finish their code, they have to tell their code to everybody. And so what that enables us to do is we're going to hold you to the standard of who you say you are and expect you to do that. When we see any deviation outside of that, we are going to call that a rogue action of the old man. And all we're going to do is say, you know what, dude? Like, that's not who you are. That's not who you are. And the people that would want to fight back on that and say, well, like, yeah, I mean, are they really a new person because they're still doing X, Y, and Z? I'm like, who's to say they're not a new person? Just when you transform yourself like that, it doesn't mean that some of the things still don't rear their heads. And this is why I went back to Jocko. When he says discipline is everything, I believe that the discipline piece is the piece right after identity, right? So that's where we establish who we are. And then as we are disciplined in walking that out, it gives our brain the positive feedback loop to remind us of who we are. We then begin building that new track record. And so big picture, some people could look at this whole like methodology and philosophy and be like, that's just the fake it till you make it. And I'm like, well, first of all, you could call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right. But like, come and try and fight the fruit that we see. Yeah. Come and try. Right. You could call it fake it till you make it, or you could call it living from identity. I don't give a crap what you call it.
Yeah.
If it changes a man's life, changes his marriage, and changes how he shows up, you can call it whatever you want. I really don't care. Yeah. Right. And the person that would want to push back, like, well, I don't want to fake it till I make it. I'm like, dude, you're never going to make it then. At some point, you have to shift something in here, and it is going to feel fake. It's going to.
Yeah.
No matter how you slice it, right? No matter how you slice it, it's going to feel fake. And that's where it is this mental shift of saying, no, it's not fake. This is who I am. And if I see something otherwise, that's a rogue event. That's the old man trying to make his way back.
Yeah.
And the guy, I'm going to shoot in the face every single day because he has no right or say anymore. And if he does have a resurgence of some sort, I'm just going to look at that and be like, that's weird, and shoot him in the face. You're dead. You're gone. And just keep moving on. So I know that might not fully answer the question, or for some people listening, maybe like, whoa, you should be a politician. You really dance circles around that. No. And if someone's like that, I'm just like, come fight the fruit, come fight it.
Nah, bro, you got the results, man. Like
exactly.
Yeah, you have the results. You're seeing it in your community and in the guys that you've been called to serve. Yeah, dude, like it's a no. You can't deny that, right? Yep. Yeah, and I think you have a great valid point, man. Like it is, and as you're talking about it and expanding on the whole identity aspect of it, and I'm like, yeah, like the war is going on here, like for sure. That's where it all starts. That's where it all stems from. And the more battles you win inside of that mind, the more your actions and your behaviors and everything starts becoming a lot more congruent, right, with that identity. But if you always hold firm to the identity that you're adopting and believing, like that is true north every time.
Yes. I would say, again, and you've probably heard it before, but identity forms beliefs, beliefs form thoughts, thoughts form actions, actions form habits. So if you really want to get deep into the answer, if we still see these actions, it is an indicator you are still holding on to that old identity somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere you're still holding on to it. That reading your code is, you're just like reading some random words in a book. And until you read that and adopt that with true conviction and true faith, you're still holding on to something over here, because otherwise we wouldn't see those actions. You're still holding on to it at some point then. And that's another challenge we give the guys. If we see it consistently, we just start asking, dude, like, let's think, what are you still holding on to? Because you have to be holding on to something somewhere. That's where it just comes down to like doing the inside work and doing the deep work. And that's the part that men don't like doing. They don't like slowing the heck down and looking inside, because when they do, they see crap they don't like. And, and what we say all the time is what lives in the dark dies in the light. Go into the dark place and drag that crap into the fresh light of day and let it start to die. As long as it stays there, it's going to fester, grow, and multiply. You got to drag it into the light. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. I love that. Yeah. Dude, you got me pumped. I just,
dude,
you got me pumped. I got like so many thoughts going through my head right now in terms of like the methodology. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome, bro. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about, just as we got a little bit of time here, the importance of brotherhood, man. You know, we see a lot, especially in this space. Like you see a lot of guys that are lone wolfing it, right? Like they're trying to figure things out on their own. And a lot of the times they feel like if they ask for help, it's kind of like they're less of a man, right? Like they feel less of a man or less masculine or whatever it is, because they feel like they have to ask for help, especially in the realm of family, right? Like you very rarely, at least growing up, did I ever get asked when I was married in my early years, hey, how's your marriage, dude? You know what I mean? Or, hey, how's your relationship with God? Or how's your relationship with your kid? right? Like,
yeah.
I never get those questions from many people. Like, it's not a commonality amongst men. So I'd like you to talk about kind of the importance of brotherhood and having a tribe of like-minded men in your corner and around you. So,
yeah. Well, and I think when guys think, you know, if I ask for help, it makes me less of a man. I always say to that, if you don't ask for help, you will always be less of a man. So great. So dude, pick your poison. Either pick the poison of feeling a little awkward and asking for help, or just know you will always be less of a man if you don't ask for help. So you either going to have to deal with a little pride, and then you can actually be empowered by asking for help, or you can let your pride win and just know you're always going to be a subpar version of yourself. And that's up to you to choose. That's up to you. I can't make that choice for you. Right. But as far as brotherhood goes, like, I mean, Proverbs says a man who seeks isolation seeks his own destruction. And I firmly believe that, like, you're a believer, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go all the way back to Genesis, right? Creation. Okay. God creates everything. Right, heavens, earth, separates the sea from the land, all, just everything. Right, creates the birds, creates Adam. He creates Adam. Right, sin has not yet entered the picture. God just created everything. The perfect, holy God created all of this. Sin is not here, and what does He say? It is not good. What's not good, God? Your holy hand just made everything. Sin has not yet entered the world, and you just said something isn't good? That's weird. But what did He say isn't good? It's not good that man be alone. So He went and made a helper. So before sin and destruction and deception and everything had entered the world, before it ever happened, God, the one thing that God said that was not good was that man was alone. If it was not good for man to be alone before sin, destruction, all the confusion, delusion, and everything entered the world, how much more bad is it that we be alone now? Right? I mean, if you took all the nutrition advice that is online, for example, and aggregated it all, like, you stop breathing, stop drinking water, don't do anything, because if your water's from the wrong source, it's going to kill you. If your food's from the wrong source, it's going to kill you. If your air is it's going to kill you, everything. Right. And it's so easy to just try to take in all this information by yourself, and it's just going to wreck you. And so getting guys in your corner that can be the distillation of wisdom, right? And that to me is where a lot of that power comes from, is you can listen to all these voices about nutrition, marriage, spiritual, parenting, whatever it is. And you start to get overwhelmed by the sheer volume of voices. But if you distill down all those voices into a whether it be a really small group or hundreds, I don't care if it's in person or online or whatever, if you distill that down, what you're doing essentially is you're taking all the years of experience aggregated from all of those brains, and you get access to it. This is why the saying leaders are readers. Because the average book, they did a study on it. The average book takes anywhere from 5 to 10 years of experience to write. So when I go the other day, I bought this new book, and I binged it on the car ride to Boise on audiobook. I binged a book in 8 hours that took another man, actually, because he's been coaching for 50 years. So it took him 50 years to aggregate down all the knowledge that I got in 8 hours.
Wild, right?
Right?
Yeah.
I just condensed 50 years in 8 hours.
Yeah.
Now imagine if you surround yourself with other brothers that, like, say hundreds of them, and they're in their 30s or 40s. I mean, was that like 430,000 hours or some ungodly number like that?
Yeah.
What you now have access to is you have access to all of that wisdom. you have access to all of those mistakes and how to avoid them. Yeah. You have access to all of those successes and how to get those. And at the same time, one of the guys in the Iron Society came up with this term. He calls it the shield wall. So whenever guys are struggling, whenever guys are, like just having a hard time, he created this like word picture that all of the guys, basically all of us, grab our shields and put them behind us. Yeah. And we slot that is coming onto his life. Right. And I think that ultimately is what becomes so powerful when you get a group of men that have a common mindset and a common outcome. Is it's not just what is your potential now, but what are you protected from? You have these other men that will literally go to battle for you. And like in the Iron Society, guys pop in, they're like, hey guys, going through this, need prayer. And within seconds and minutes, guys either saying, hey, I'm praying for you, or guys writing out prayers of like being able to encourage this person, giving people phone calls, not even waiting for them to respond in the community, just got their phone number and called them. Right. We've had guys that lived locally close to each other, drive over to somebody's house. Nice. Right. Because they're like, they knew they were in the same town. You have to have a brotherhood. So whether that's, like the group that you lead, whether it's a group somebody leads, I firmly believe, like, especially for Christian men, because men's ministry, as much as I love it, and as much as I love church and I love the church, men have been suffering for years in churches, and that's part of what got us here. And it's no bad on the church. They have certain constraints. But if you're a man and you are not in I believe if you're not in some kind of group or mastermind or coaching, organization or something, you are leaving yourself incredibly vulnerable to not only being taken out, but you're leaving so much of your potential on the table because of the protection that is, in a group and in a tribe like that, the wisdom, all of that. To me, it's a non-negotiable. Like, it's one of my values in my code. I value community. Without that, it's like, good luck doing it on your own. Good freaking luck.
Yeah, man. No, that's powerfully stated, brother. That's what it's about right there. And you're right. Like when I tapped into like these guys with the Apogee and stuff, man, like, and I'm part of that group, like it's changed my life substantially. So, and just as you said, right, people ask for prayer, like boom, 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 everybody's there. People are geographically close to each other, and it's just, it levels you up in ways that you can't imagine.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. The genius is in the group. Yeah. The genius is in the group.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All
right, brother. Do you got time for one more? Is that good?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I'm going to do one more for you. I usually end with this question, and it's in your experience from working with so many men, right? If you had to narrow it down to a few traits, what makes a dad a great family leader?
Man, first and foremost, and I didn't listen to the interview you did with Kyle, but I know this is part of his philosophy. As we use a similar term inside of the Iron Society, but I think first and foremost, being a savage servant. Like, if you think anything is below you as the leader of your home, you are losing part of your credibility and authority. So I would say first and foremost, a servant's heart. Like, everything we do is in service of our family. A lot of people think, oh, you guys go to the gym in the morning and you do this and you do that because you want to look strong and all this. No. Nope. I do this so I can play with my kids till I'm 90 something years old. I'm doing this because if any threat came to my family, I will be absolutely capable of unleashing hell on whatever would come against my family. And that is all in service. I work my butt off in service of my family. So I think definitely the first one that comes to my mind would be a servant's heart. And the second one that would come to my mind. I often refer to this as being the chief repenter. Guys, men specifically, and husbands and fathers, I think over the years have done a bad job of messing up and then the precedence for what it looks like to put your hand in the air and say, hey, I screwed up. Will you forgive me? And then reconciling that relationship in whatever way needs to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that if we mess up as men in our families and just move on and carry on, what we're telling and what we're teaching our kids by our example is mess up and just carry on with life. And the wake and the mess that you made, you don't need to work it up.
Yeah.
So I think being the chief repenter would be an absolutely massive piece of that. And gosh, man, I mean, for a third one, I mean, servant's heart, chief repenter. The last one that just comes to my mind would be just the relentless pursuit of growth. Like, I think if you're not growing, you're dying. And in every way, I think a man has to, you never arrive ever. When your mission and your objective is done when you're buried. And until then, you're not done trying to get a little bit better every single day. You're not done trying to love your wife a little more. You're not done trying to love and lead your kids a little more. You're not done trying to make an impact in the world. You're not done. So be relentlessly in pursuit of growth. Because if that is true, everything in your life will consistently reap the benefits of you pursuing growth every single time.
Yes, sir. That's great, man. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Love
absolutely.
it, brother. All right, brother. Well, I feel like I could talk to you for a long time, bro. Because I think we could riff on so many different topics, man.
Oh, probably, dude.
Yeah,
probably.
dude. Bro, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the great work that you're doing with Iron Society, and all the men that you've already helped and that you continue helping and that you will continue to help. And anything and everything that I can do to support in any way, man, you let me know. I am here for you, brother. I'm here to serve as well. And I'd love to have you back, bro. Like, I think we could talk about other topics as well. And I just appreciate you making the time today and coming on the show and pouring into these guys and, giving a little piece of the wisdom that you've had and the experience that you've had, running this program, and also just from the mentorship that you've gotten growing up as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate you, brother.
Anytime we could chop it up anytime. And I got to have you on the Iron Society podcast too, because we just launched that. So
nice.
We'll have you, and I'll pick your brain about a bunch of stuff that you're probably way better than me at.
Nah, so. I doubt that, man. I doubt that, but I will. Come on, brother. I'll definitely. I'll do my best to pour in as well. Yeah.
Awesome, brother. Yeah. It's been fun.
Thanks, man. Likewise. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Cody. I've gone ahead and linked up all of his contact info in the show notes / description below. Go follow him on Instagram, where he puts out really valuable content. All right, my fellow Alpha Dad, I'll catch you on the next one.
1, 2, 3 actions I didn't meet. 4, 5, 6 fear and silence begin to mix. 7, 8, 9 the thought of being emotionless started taking over my mind.